Phil, Mike, thank you for joining us on the podcast. I appreciate it. Before we dive in, if you guys can give a quick introduction of yourselves and your companies, and then we're going to dive into some of these large projects that you got going on. So Phil, if you don't mind kicking it off.
Yeah, my name's Phil Bathurst. I'm responsible for Aspire MRO based in Fort Worth, Texas. Large wide-body MRO with a focus on 777 conversions. We've been in business for almost 2 years.
And I'm Mike Raporto. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer over at Launch Technical Workforce Solutions. We're the largest and most innovative staffing and service provider in the aviation aerospace industry. Today we have around 1,500 mechanics working for us, spread across 200 different locations. And I have a team of 55 recruiters back at our corporate office in Chicago and spread all across the country. We're unique where we don't just support MROs, but we also support airlines directly, manufacturers, and transportation customers as well. So very excited to be here, Chris. Look forward to the conversation.
Nice. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. So the reason I reached out is I've seen you guys post a couple times about this pretty large project or, pipeline of projects that you've got going on, converting 777's from passenger to freighter. You're doing those conversions. So I guess let's start there. Where is that demand coming from?
Sure. So we're doing the 777, the Mammoth 777 conversion, and where the demand's coming from is the aging of the wide body fleet. So the DC-10s are all aging out. 747s are starting to age out, and then on top of that, a lot of the green initiatives, particularly in Europe, some of the older planes just cost so much and are so inefficient. And in the meantime, Boeing's not able to produce enough wide body pre-modded airplanes or wide body freighters that it makes sense for the 777. And then also the 777 are starting to get a little bit older, the original ones, that some of the airlines, rather than spend multiple millions of dollars on renewing the interior, they've decided to go forward with getting an upgraded aircraft. So our project, again, working with Mammoth. Mammoth does they do all the engineering and they do the parts acquisition and the kitting, and then Aspire MRO does the installations. So currently we have 5 777's in work. The first STC should be approved by the end of the year, in which case we really go into more of a production mode, whereas right now we're in more of a certification mode. So we have 5 lines, and then they're looking to do other lines of work in multiple areas throughout the world, some potentially in Asia, some in Europe for certain. And that's good with us. There's plenty of work out there. Mammoth has a lot already sold. As a facility, we just on the cargo conversions, we're sold out through 2028. Ultimately, we'd like to get to, we're doing maybe half our facility with cargo conversions and the other half with heavy maintenance. Our location, we're in what was the old, well, not that old, but the old American Airlines wide body facility. So we have a hangar that's 860,000 square feet that can hold 6 wide body aircraft. Two of which are in fully automated maintenance stands. So you can pull a 777 into our hangar in 2 of the slots and not really have to use a ladder at all on the airplane. It's what they call the clamshell. It closes around them. So our ultimate plan is we'll be doing 5 lines of work, and then we'll have an extra bay to be able to induct the airplane and also deliver them through. Also, each of these planes typically has a heavy maintenance visit with it, or a C check at least, as well as the customers typically want to take care of every AD, every service bulletin. So it's not just the mod itself; it's all the other work around it also.
Okay. And then that process of going through the first half of getting the STC in place and all the engineering, what goes into that? How many people does it take to do that? And how long does it take to get that done?
Sure. Well, I'll speak a little bit for our sister company, Mammoth. I think Mammoth has somewhere around 300 engineers, and they're designing the 777 cargo door from the ground up. And I guess what people have to understand, you look at a plane with a cargo door, and you're thinking, oh, okay, they cut a big hole in the side of the airplane, which it is a large hole, over 20 foot long. But what's also going on is every floor beam in the entire plane, I think a 200 has 60 some and a 300 has 80 some. Every single floor beam in the entire airplane gets replaced. Every floorboard, the center wing area gets reinforced. So it's not just cut a hole in the side of the airplane. So the work required on a plane is somewhere between, we've heard estimates anywhere from 70,000 to 100,000 man hours. And it's safe to say the first one would probably take double that. And part of that is it's all new. I mean, no one's done this before. So, and they're not really they're using Boeing data, but they're not using Boeing parts. So, they're going out and getting floor beams that can bear more weight, and they're proving that. But so we start with the 200 folks at Mammoth, and then we as a group, I think in August of 23, we had 50 mechanics that were billable. As of last week, and again with the help of Launch, we're at about just shy of 350 mechanics. So what we're doing differently that most people probably listening to this, if have done this, would say, it's a challenge, is most people, when you do an STC, a major project like this, you do one aircraft, and you get that aircraft done. And once it's done, then you finish all your parts so that everything's the right way, and then you do the additional lines. Whereas between Mammoth and ourselves, the decision was made to build up the workforce and go ahead and get started on all of them, with everyone understanding that the airplane, we might have 4 airplanes completed before the first one delivers, because they cannot deliver till the STC is completed. And then when the STC is completed, then whatever's done can deliver. The aircraft itself, the first one, we're putting power back on it. The equipment's being reinstalled, starting the operational checks. And we should be done as far as what we call the routine work, the installation on the first one should be done somewhere in the next couple months. And then the team from Mammoth will come in, and they will do what they call company testing. And what that is preparing for the FAA to do whatever testing they want to do. And then that's when it becomes a little bit of a challenge, is getting the FAA and their time frame, to get going with everything the FAA has going on. So there'll be quite a few test flights, quite a few, verification, the aircraft can do this and do that. And then we go into production. And that's when things change a lot. Mammoth, typically then, their design engineers won't really be used anymore. They'll be more liaison engineers. So they'll probably reduce their workforce a bit, whereas we'll probably double our workforce. Because what will happen is Mammoth will be in a position that we're getting kits and we're able to flow the work efficiently. And at that point, and this will be interesting for some MROs out there, at that point, we'll expect to put a minimum of 750 man hours a day, 7 days a week on each aircraft. So we'll be billing or be producing over 100,000 man hours a month just on these mods. Whereas now, the first plane, we're doing up to 1,200 man hours a day. But it's not super efficient, right? We're putting things in, we're adjusting it, we're working with engineering, and it's a great partnership with Mammoth. It doesn't hurt that we both have the same parent company, but it's all about how do we work together, how do we adjust this, and right now I don't want to say there's as many liaison engineers on the plane as there is mechanics, but there's quite a few. I mean, it's to the point now, if there's a problem, It's not send an email to a liaison engineer. It's walk off the plane, grab a liaison engineer, walk back on the plane, and in turn and document things and go forward, which again is a bit of a challenge. And we can talk about this later. Is we're in a paperless environment. As a new MRO, we were able to say, hey, what's the best things out there you can do? And one of my philosophies was we want to partner with the best companies out there rather than us trying to be everything. So we're paperless. We use Empower MX. But another example of that is launch. With Mike here, is I could have built a recruiting team, but they'd never be world class. Mike's team is world class, and in turn, they can do what we need done. And a lot of times, and I think what MROs don't look at, even airlines, is you make that investment, but once we grow, we're sort of done. We just need to maintain. So you look at an outside source, particularly someone that you'd consider world class, and everyone assumes expensive. But when we work together as partners, and one thing Launch did was we pitched this to Mike when we had, like 20 mechanics. And
Phil, I thought you were going to start when we met you out there 2.5 years ago when you had just as many employees on both hands and you were still painting the facility.
What happened then was, the great part was, I had the launch and I had, we had run across each other multiple times and we knew where they stood, but they were willing as partners to understand that they were in it for the long run. I had some other teams that were their competitors that it was about, what can I do now? Now, what's happening is Mike's not smiling as much as I would be in his role, but they're really making out, because what they did was they said, we believe you can grow the way you say you can. Therefore, we don't need all this money now, or we don't need to make our money now. We think through a partnership in the long term, this will do a lot of great things. And again, and Mike can talk about this a little bit, the interesting part about us with them is it's become to the point now that people want to understand what the secret sauce is. And there's nothing secret. We're just good partners. I have other MROs reach out to me about, what are you doing special with launch and how are you getting people? And I think Mike will say he hears the same thing. They want to know, what are you guys doing with Aspire, and why are they being treated differently? Sorry to head off on that tangent a bit, but so ultimately from the planes though, Chris, we will be heading into production soon. That's when we really ramp up. That's again what launch will really help us. That's when technology helps us. I think the other thing that people don't always look at is, everyone says I need 1,000 people or I need whatever. But, are you using technology to eliminate constraints? Are you looking at what's your plan? Do you have the parts on board when you need them? In turn, what will happen is maybe you don't need quite as many people if you can plan properly.
Yeah, Mike, can you add some color to that too?
Mike can always
add color. Chris. I thought Phil, we were again together. Phil actually had the opportunity to come visit our corporate office and spend time with our team, the team that makes it happen. And he took our top performers out to dinner, which was great. It was really the first time a customer came to our operation just to show appreciation for all the hard work and effort that the team's putting in. But, like I mentioned earlier, I met Phil about 2.5 years ago. I knew Phil from his time at Empower MX and Embraer. Again, we met in Fort Worth, and he had 10 to 15 employees at the time, and really, one HR point of contact, really no recruiting plan. And, we had the opportunity to sit down with Phil, and what was really refreshing about our initial conversation is, Phil wanting to go against the grain and seeking to really just do things differently from a labor and manpower perspective. Just because the traditional, pay an hour, bill an hour, traditional staffing model is just broken. And, again, fast forward today, we've got 215 people on payroll. We've got about 50 people tracking to his facility. We've hired 35 direct employees on top of 20 people we've converted last quarter. But the solution that we have with Phil was really developed because of the success that we had through our JV partnership with Delta Airlines. So long story short, really since 2018, we formed a JV with Delta, where we hired at any given point, we had 350 to 500 technicians across base, line, cabin, engine maintenance, really spread across all locations and outstations. And we've converted really over 1,500 employees in that time period. So it was an incredibly successful program, and we were looking to replicate this model with other partners. So, we pitched this to about 5 of our key customers, and Phil was really the first one to take the leap of faith and take us up on this offering. And what's been really key about the total labor management model is it's an integrated solution with an on-site embedded team. So, our team that we constructed was really based off Aspire's forecast and Aspire's demand. And just to give you an idea of what that team consists of to support that demand, we have an on-site program manager that's really mainly focused on the customer, really focused on forecasting. They're in really all of Aspire's planning meetings. We have on-site support, on-site coordinators that are there just to support the mechanics. So they're there to help them really transition to the facility, work their way through in-dock. They're there for just any payroll, HR, safety-related issues. We have on-site recruiters. We have dedicated compliance, payroll. So all of that is exclusive to this relationship and this arrangement. And what's really unique, and where he's bold, and I commend him for being bold, is that the total labor management model is not just staffing. It's not just, hey, I need 50 people. What we've worked on really with Phil and Phil's leadership team is leveraging Launch's full scope of capabilities. So, of course, it's, hey, I need, mechanics at these 3 levels, but they also leverage Launch to support direct hires. We've brought in our Launch Teams group, which is our internal team of mechanics. It's a service to take on more unique, more complex work. Phil leverages our pipeline program. So we have, Phil, 35 to 40 employees on a visa, on a sponsorship program. Not only that, he leverages our Working Heroes program, which is our veteran recruiters dedicated to recruiting just vets. And then not only that, he leverages our academy program, which is our non-commissioned ambassadors that are bouncing all around the country, leveraging our strategic alliances with some of these larger A&P schools to vet out transitioning students. So, it's not just one lever to pull. It's us sitting around the table, really understanding the forecast, listening to our customer and what their need and what their problem is, and then co-developing a solution. And why it's successful is the relationship is governed by a board and KPIs. So we have KPIs around, headcount growth. We have KPIs around attrition percentages, conversions, labor market analysis. So the Aspire team understands how competitive they are in the market. But it's a one-stop shop. It's an all-encompassing solution. And again, the program was created and developed to really augment Aspire's internal staffing capabilities. And that's why our program in this relationship has been just so incredibly successful today.
Well, and you touch on something that's interesting too. It sounds like you guys are in some way looking towards the future of the industry with this as well, because one of the main challenges as I talk to customers all the time is trying to find good people, trying to keep them, and especially in the zone of the MROs that we work with, is adding technicians a lot of times can cut into the profits, or it might not even be feasible to find them. So how are you guys, what are you seeing out there in terms of the next generation of technicians, of getting people into the aviation industry to take care of these aircraft? Because all you hear is shortage. But I think people are now starting to be like, what are the solutions and what's real? So how are you guys as a basically a workforce company, how are you approaching that and trying to tackle that? I know you mentioned going to some of these schools, but what's like kind of the holistic view?
Hey, Chris, one just real quick. Hey, Michael handled that, but hey, just one thing I'd like to stress is it's about culture. It's about people wanting to work where they want to work. And we've been lucky enough, since we're new, it's easier to create a culture than it is to change a culture. So an example was a month ago, we had a bunch of local high school students that were actually going to go on the way to college to different aviation platforms or different aviation colleges within different areas. And they had a camp that was put together by one of the colleges. And they came in here and they were just so impressed and so excited. So the idea is do that. But what's even more exciting was how our mechanics embraced these kids coming through, that they were proud of what they were doing. Now, what we're doing a little different is the fact that we're doing these big airplanes. It's never been done. It's all U.S. made. It's about excitement and culture. So we're having all kinds of people come in. I mean, one of our biggest challenges, and Mike can talk to this too, is we've been a little reluctant to bring in brand new people because it's so complicated what we're doing now, because it's all based on engineering, not production yet. But as soon as we get that going and we can really take advantage of this, that's where you drive it. But it's all culturally driven from the MRO perspective. Now, that's where, again, and I'm surprised Mike didn't say the story. When Mike first came in to talk to us about what they could do for us, he had this big slideshow and he was ready to go. And finally, I said to him, guys, you're the experts. You're not selling me on anything. What would you do if this was your MRO? Using your expertise, what would you do? And that's how, Mike's mentioned all the things they do. It's because they've gotten creative. They said, we do a little bit of this, we do a little bit of that, we do a little bit of this. We'll combine all these and we'll get them going. But I just wanted to get that out there. It's culture, and then it's letting the right people do the right things. And Mike's team's the right one. So, Mike, I'm sorry about stepping on you a little bit with that answer, and I know you have some really good answers for how you bring along these people to start with. But I do believe it's culturally where people want to be. And I think second is diversity. We try to get younger guys. We try and look at different ethnic groups or whatever, not to do anything different, but just to ensure we're inclusive. Because you look at our leadership team, it's like, guys, we got to understand, if we want the mechanics that are 20, 25 years old, we've got to be able to relate to them. And right now, we can't. So how do we do that? And that's where Mike and his team comes in. And, it's not just about staffing. It might be feedback. And Mike mentioned KPIs. If we're losing a person, why are we losing them? What can we do different or better? And what are we learning from that? And again, I think that's where it's different with us. That, a lot of MROs are just out there and said, hey, Mike, I need 50 people next week, or I need 25, or I need this, or I need that. If they show up, great. I'm totally dependent on Mike. I'm not using anyone else. Our agreement is, as long as Mike's and the launch team's producing, why use anyone else? We have a consistent way to do it. So sorry about derailing that a bit, but I do believe the culture is so big. But go ahead, Mike. How do you ensure we hit those people?
There's Phil. You made a comment. You're publicly humiliating me here, Phil. But I have to go back to his comment around the one of the meetings that Phil and I had. So, this is just, when I mentioned Phil's, he goes against the grain and he's bold. So one of the first presentations that I had was, really selling him or presenting all of our different staffing programs. And again, I talked about the veteran program, the visa program, our professional, which is more senior level, white collar type jobs, launch academy, launch teams. So Chris, we had, I think, 2 hours blocked off, and Phil was in there with his whole leadership team. I don't even think I got by the introduction slide before he said, hey, stop right there. And he's like, I'm good. I trust you. Do whatever you guys need to do. So, caught me off guard there, jumped back into the presentation. He goes, no, Mike, I don't think you understand. I don't think you're listening here. Like, we trust you. You are the subject matter experts. We are exclusive with you because, you understand our needs. You understand our challenges. You tell us how we're going to solve for this larger issue. So we mentioned the Academy program, which has been great. We have a strategic alliance with the Aviation Institute of Maintenance, which allows us really to co-develop course curriculum and really just gives us a more dominant presence at, their 15 locations all across the country. But our Working Heroes program has been incredibly successful. Again, you look at a veteran, well, they might not have civilian maintenance experience. They have the transferable skills. They got the attitude, the aptitude, the reliability piece down. That's been key for us. Our visa program, again, we've got 30 to 40 with Aspire. I have about 250 working for me. in the U.S. today, with about 150 in onboarding. And, Phil and I are actually partnering together to bring on a new visa, which is going to allow us to tap into 79 additional countries. Right now, we're primarily in Mexico, Chile, and Singapore. But the one thing that you touched on, Chris, is, well, how do you scale? How do you gain more heads? It's not always about netting more heads. It's the emphasis on attrition and retention. And I don't know if you want me to go down this path, but
Sure, let's do it.
I came prepared, to this conversation because we all know the labor market is extremely tight right now. I mean, we're looking at a shortfall of technicians by 2027. I think it's 25%. So it's one thing to attract them and to hire them, but it's another to retain. What I'm really proud of in the Launch Aspire relationship is really there's a few key things that allow us to maintain an off payroll rate of 2.7%. So that also includes conversions. So that percent's even lower. I spoke to a customer today, and their off payroll percentage with their contract houses was 37%. The reason for that, again, it goes back to competitive pay rates, and that being one of our KPIs. Every quarter we do our board meeting and we review a labor market analysis. Phil wants to know what's going on in the market with MROs, with manufacturers. How do we continue to remain competitive to attract mechanics, not just outside of the Fort Worth area, but just outside of the state of Texas? 75% of our workforce today relocated to Texas for the opportunity to work for Aspire MRO.
Wow.
The opportunity for overtime, that's just a testament to what Phil talked about earlier, where they're at in the STC process, and with them having 5 lines of work. One thing that I'm incredibly proud of, and it really doesn't exist, at least on our side of the business, is advancement and conversion opportunities for contractors. Again, we promoted 20 mechanics already this year. We've converted 20 in our last quarter. We're looking at converting another 15 to 20 next week. So, it's more than just a long-term contract job. If they want the opportunity to be a full-time employee, Aspire offers it, but they're constantly vetting out our technicians and identifying, who has potential to not just jump up levels and pay rate levels, but opportunities to be leads, to be supervisors, to even potentially take over, programs within Aspire. If you look on social media, the one team mindset and mentality, and that's from leadership down. That's from Phil, that's from Steve Hojackney, but the integration of contractors and direct, they're treated the same. Phil invites them to all the company events, all the company outings. We have co-branded uniforms. Anytime there's a team meeting, he pulls every single employee together, whether they're Launch, whether they're Aspire, where at many MROs they're treated differently. You look at performance management, again, Phil, all a testament to the conversions and promotions. But what I like about it, in my side of the business, we technically hear all the negative about somebody, and when we hear the negative, it's almost too late. Aspire has a process in place where they review our contractors' performance. We review exit interviews. We review it quarterly. They've implemented performance improvement plans. Just if there's a potential quality or attendance issue, what they do is they give the employee every chance to succeed. And that's obviously helped with the retention rate. And I guess just going back to the culture, what I love is that, Phil made a key hire in Steve Hojackney. He's an incredibly well-respected MRO leader. Phil and Steve go way back from their days at Timco. But what I love about him is, he puts his team before other people. He's on the floor. He walks the floor, gets to know all our contractors. His office is even on the floor level. He's involved with all of his mechanics. It just creates a very positive, open, and collaborative environment. That starts with Phil. That starts with Steve. And then lastly, what's been really successful, again, not just to net, but to maintain, having an on-site team is key. So again, I mentioned that we have the recruiters, but having the program manager, having the on-site coordinators, where their time, effort, and energy is purely dedicated to making sure there's strong signal strengths to our fulfillment team around demand. But again, jumping in and addressing just any sort of issue, any sort of challenge with any of the employees that we have on site, which allows us to stay ahead of any unexpected attrition. So, this is primarily why the total labor management solution is successful, because it's integrated, we're on site, it's collaborative. And if there's any issues, we don't wait for board meetings. We'll just call a meeting and address it at a leadership level and move on. So I know I rambled a little bit there, but it's something I take great pride in.
No, I appreciate it because it ties the whole thing together, because I can see where you need both of your mindsets and capabilities to make this relationship work. And it ties back to the culture piece that you were talking about before, Phil. So like the kind of aspects I heard from it is they need to attract and retain the right people. They need to be paid the right amount. Overtime opportunities are huge. And then another aspect that you don't necessarily think of with contracted work is like a path to promotion or leadership. Like, so I can see a future vision of what I'm working towards, because we have customers who say, yeah, we pay really good. But then when we go, if the technicians who left us even answer, it's like, why did you leave? Because somebody said they'd pay me $5 more an hour. But that's not really thinking about the future or where I want to set up. So it's interesting how you have those kind of three key aspects. But I don't think, Phil, from your side, if you didn't look at it from the perspective of, okay, we're going to create this culture, we are actually going to welcome them in to have these opportunities, I think it would, I don't know, it might fall apart without that kind of leadership. So I understand now what you're saying, where you bring the technical aspect of the workforce management, but I guess we found the key ingredient. Another key ingredient is that leadership and that approach. Is that a fair summary?
Chris, I think it is. I think the big thing to keep in mind is we need to treat people fairly, and we need to treat them with respect, and we need to be treated the way we want to be treated. So, one thing we always talk amongst our leadership team is the only people earning money for us are the guys on the floor. None of us are adding value. They're the ones. They're the revenue generators. So it's the same with Mike's side. So, it was fairly shocking to me that, I went up to Chicago to meet with Mike's team, the recruiters that are recruiting for us, basically to say thank you and to really talk about our culture so that when they're recruiting for us, they can talk through it. I asked for feedback from them. And then we took the top performers and took them out to dinner. To me, that's just a normal, what everyone should do. It shocked me that Mike said I'm the first senior leader from any company that ever did that. So, I guess from that perspective, that's what it's about too. It's about treating these guys right. But I gotta be fair about this. Launch has been super open to things that if they didn't believe we were going to get large and didn't believe what we could do, what we said we were going to do, they wouldn't have been. And amazingly so. Like, I remember calling Mike and say, look, I want all your guys to wear Aspire shirts. It's okay if they put a launch logo on it, and that's cool. But they need to wear Aspire shirts. If you see any pictures of anything of our hangar, and the guys wanted dry fit, so we got them dry fit shirts, maybe the only ones that need it. It's they're all Aspire teammates. Now, you can look a little closer, and some of them have some launch stuff on their shirts, but again, it's not all just us. When we have a picnic, when we have a Christmas party, Mike's supporting us financially too. So that's the level of partnership we have. And, that's why I think it's interesting when people ask me or Mike, how do you do it? We want part of that. It's not as simple as just how you do it. It's a lot of trust. It's a lot of, I think our companies, have the same culture. We're about, if you do the right things will happen. And one other point I'd like to make to the MROs out there that are worried about paying a guy an extra $1 or $2 an hour, I'd rather pay a guy an extra $5 an hour and then hold him accountable for being efficient. We make our money through efficiencies, okay? When I was at Embraer, we turned around that facility just by giving the guys the support they needed to make them efficient. We raised pay. We did all kinds of things as long as they were efficient. And you know what? If you want to hold someone accountable, pay them a little more. Say, I'm going to hold you accountable. Here's the expectations. So, that's the other exciting thing for us. When we go into production mode, it becomes a fixed price project, which is huge for efficiency. That's when these high-end mechanics, we're saying, okay, guys, now we go. And, we're being as efficient as we can now, but we get paid for the hours. In the future, it will be about how can you be. And personally, and Mike said it, and I thought it was odd that no one does this either. We promote contractors, and that's like unheard of. We bring a guy in, and he might only be getting paid $37 an hour. But if he can do the same work as the guys making $42 an hour, our guys will say he deserves $42 an hour. And again, it's about doing it right. But again, that's a place a person wants to stay. And that's my leader supports me. Heck, I will do everything I can to make this successful. And again, Mike hit on Steve Hojackney. He, a great friend of mine from in the 90s, but we came up through the same school. We ran different, at Timco, there's a lot of people out of Timco. They're running airlines and running MROs. And we were lucky enough to be in that era. And we got together, and it's about doing the right things, holding people accountable, being good leaders, and having a great culture. And if you can do that, you have people. Again, I have total confidence that we'll add the 300 heads we need to add. I know we'll be able to do it because right now we've got contractors telling other contractors this is the place to be. We have directs calling their friends saying, "Hey, I can't believe you're not here." We had an issue with some of the visa guys. That we had a group of 10 that wanted to come on board, but there was another group of 10 waiting to verify they liked it. So, you can't fake your way through that. You have to do the right things. You have to have the right culture, and then you get these people.
Yep.
And from that perspective, too, you touched on something that's interesting, and I know we've only got about 10 minutes left, so I do want to touch on this. You mentioned efficiency. I know that you guys went digital, 100% digital or paperless about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer than that.
Yep.
And I know as we talk through this, the whole point isn't just hire as many people as you possibly can for the sake of hiring. So a couple of things. Do you feel like you would have been able to take on this many technicians and scale this way if you didn't have that kind of efficiency built in? Why did you focus on that piece? The reason I'm asking is because, we've got a lot of customers and prospects that we talk to that are still doing things very paper based. And there's a lot of fear that goes around it. And honestly, there's a lot of, it's not like like we said before we were recording, it's not like a silver, it's not a magic bullet where everything's suddenly fixed. You still have to work through certain things, but like, why was that an important piece to this process? And do you feel like you could have done all of these things without introducing those efficiencies?
So Chris, I think we could have done, we wouldn't be where we are. I would assume still be successful. But I think one thing to keep in mind is part of digital or being like that is the fact that we know what we're doing at every moment. I probably have 275 mechanics working right now. I could get on my other screen and basically see what job every single one of them's on. We could see what the estimate was for that job, what the actual hours were for that job. We could see everything. We could also see, there's efficiency on the task that, hey, this was bid at 10 hours and you did it in 5, therefore your efficiency is great, or the other way around. We can also tie it to, hey, we're paying the mechanic, you're working 10 hours a day. What are you clocked into? Like, for example, right now, one of our KPIs is 95% of the time we're clocked to an aircraft or clocked into the facility will be billable to an aircraft. And so that includes training, that includes cleanup, that includes everything in that 5%. But we can monitor that live. And it includes like warranty and rework. We monitor it live, so we have all that information. We also, within our digital system, have all the materials. So, back in the day when I worked the floor, I'd have a lead, or I was a lead, or I'd have someone hand me, go see if these parts are here. If they're here, you can do this job. So you'd get the part, you'd walk to this, or you'd get the information on the part, you'd walk to the stockroom, you'd stand in line for half an hour, you'd get to the window, and then say, nope, it's not here yet. So you'd walk back to your lead, you'd probably talk to some of your friends on the way back, and you get back, you've just spent an hour of your day, and you accomplished absolutely nothing. And the really scary part is you might do the same thing tomorrow and the next day until it comes in. So we do a lot of work based on theory of constraint. Don't start it unless you have the parts. Don't start it unless you have everything set up to do the job. So our guys see that. The system we use, it'll say, to do this job, you need this skill, this skill, this skill of individuals. You need this part, and this part. And if they're not there, it's a little yellow dot. You don't work it yet. It goes green, the lead knows I can do it. So he's not sending a guy asking if it's here. It all ties together. So I think that's the part about digital that people don't really realize. Like my KPIs are live. My reports are live. We do a daily status report that back in the day, it used to be in Excel and this and that. It's just live. So my PMs are not going in and making up this and making up that. It's last 24 hours, I had 1,300 people. We sold this many jobs. It's just live data in the system. My customer also sees it. So there's no, here's what we want them to see, at least. So, it all links together that way. The other big thing is all our guys are working off tablets. So they clock into their jobs on tablets, they clock off, they get the alerts, they get emails, they get the whole thing through tablets. So 777 is quite a large aircraft. So I can have a mechanic that's up in the tail of a 777 that can literally make a call for an inspector. The inspector can pull up his tablet, verify all the paperwork. It's no longer paperwork, but it's electronic. It's good. Go out to the tail, do the final inspection, and be back in quicker time than it would have taken the mechanic to get off his lift, to come the whole way up, do this, do that. So it's little things like that add up. But I do think something that people need to understand, and part of when I worked at Empower, people had a problem grasping. If you don't have good processes in the paper world, you will fail in the digital world. Because with paper, you can play around a little bit. There's gray areas, there's this and there's that. In the digital world, where a lot's binary, unless the final step is signed off on this card and there's a date stamp and a signature in every open block, you can't do a final on it. Whereas in the world I used to be in, where everything was paper, you could miss something, you could skip something. So again, that's something else we're seeing that's huge. Our audit findings have dropped drastically because you can't miss a date, you can't miss a step, you can't sign something wrong. It's just not. You physically can't do it. You can't not return a tool, right? If you have a tool checked out against a job and you want to close that job, the final on that job, that tool has to be turned in. And back in the day, it didn't work that way. Yeah, we'll get to it later, or we'll do whatever. But that becomes a problem if it's 2:00 in the morning. You got a crew up on the plane and they want to go. So that's some of the things that I told MROs when I was dealing with them, and airlines alike, that if you're going to go digital, the first thing you have to do is you have to have good processes. You need to know how you flow this. You need to know whatever. But for us, it's been huge. I believe because of that, we only need 650 people, not 900 people, or whatever those numbers might be. Though I'm sure Mike would be thrilled to get us 900.
Well, and then it goes back to that retention and that attrition rate of, hey, if I have all these skills and I could fix an aircraft, but I'm still wading through paper, and my day-to-day job is 30 years behind my everyday life. Is this where I want to be for the next 30 years? So it's there's some downstream effects that I don't think everybody has fully thought through, but I think it's starting to get more top of mind. I'm definitely having those types of conversations more.
Part of it is, what do you want to be? I mean, we always talk that we want to be a world-class facility. Actually, I feel we are a world-class facility, but you can't be a world-class facility and not be on the leading edge of whether it's resources or whether it's your software or whatever. You just can't. I mean, your mechanics right away, you walk in a facility, you can tell, is this that, or is it not? And then that's part of the retention. Have the guys proud of where they're working. Go home and telling their family, this is so cool what I did today, or whatever it might be.
That's awesome. Well, I know we got to jump here in a minute. So before we wrap up, is there anything else that you guys want to touch on? And also, where can people get in touch with you?
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, Phil. I thought you were going to say just give a Mike Raporto's cell phone number, but they can get in touch with us on our website. We're all over social media. Recruiters are on social media, but every single posting it shows the pathway to apply. They could call in, they could email our recruiting team, and the recruiters could take them down whatever path, contract, direct. But that's probably the easiest way for them to get on board with us.
And with us, our website at Aspire MRO, there's access to, if you have questions, who to reach out to. We do we're not near on social media as much as Launch, but we also do some things on social media. But yeah, and I'd like to put out there what Mike and I were talking about earlier. We welcome everyone to our facility. I've had numerous competitors that were shocked. I'd get a call and they'd say, "I'm almost embarrassed to call you to ask if I can come visit." I'd be like, "Why?" There's nothing secret here. And again, I think that's a big deal for our guys. If we can say we have this group or this group, I think 2 weeks ago we had TAP from Portugal. I knew some of the guys are like, "We'd like to come in and see what you're doing." That meant a lot to them, but that even meant more to our guys. Our mechanics are out there showing them, "I'm replacing this floor beam, I'm doing this." And that's part of that culture and that pride. So that's the other thing. If you have anyone that wants to reach out, they can go through our website. They can contact me direct through LinkedIn or something. We will host whoever wants to come into the facility and show them exactly what we're doing.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it as well.